Have you ever wondered why two people can sleep for the same 8 hours, yet one wakes up refreshed while the other feels exhausted? At first glance, it seems like a mystery. After all, if the number of hours is identical, shouldn't the result be identical too? But nature rarely works that way. The human body is not simply counting hours on a clock. It is paying attention to when those hours occur. Think about a garden. Imagine watering the plants at sunrise every morning. The soil absorbs the moisture, the leaves open to the light, and the plants thrive. Now imagine watering that same garden at midnight. The amount of water hasn't changed, but the timing has. Suddenly the results are different because the garden follows its own natural rhythm. Your body works in much the same way. When we are young, our internal systems are remarkably adaptable. We can stay awake late into the night, recover from poor sleep, and often function reasonably well the next day. The body's repair mechanisms are strong, and the internal clock has a wider margin for error. But after the age of 70, that flexibility gradually begins to shrink. This doesn't mean the body is failing. It means the body has become more precise. Like a finely tuned instrument, it performs best when everything happens at the right time. Inside your brain sits an extraordinary biological timekeeper. It doesn't wear a watch, yet it coordinates nearly every important process in your body. It influences when hormones are released, when body temperature rises and falls, when digestion slows, when cells begin repairing themselves, and when the brain starts organizing memories from the day. Notice something fascinating here. None of these processes ask, "How many hours have you slept?" Instead, they ask, "Is this the right time to begin?" That small difference changes everything. Imagine a factory with thousands of workers. Every night, one shift leaves, another arrives, the machines are cleaned, repairs are made, supplies are restocked, and production is prepared for the next morning. If the repair crew arrives several hours late, they may still work just as hard, but they'll have less time before the factory has to reopen. Some repairs remain unfinished, maintenance is rushed, and small problems slowly accumulate. Your body follows a surprisingly similar schedule. During the night, countless maintenance tasks begin. Cells repair damage, muscles recover. The immune system performs essential housekeeping, and the brain clears away metabolic waste that builds up during the day. These processes are most effective when they begin in harmony with your body's natural clock. As we grow older, that internal schedule becomes increasingly important. The signals that tell us when to feel sleepy often arrive earlier than they once did. Ignoring those signals by staying awake far into the evening can make it harder to fall into deep, restorative sleep, even if we remain in bed for many hours afterward. In other words, after 70, sleep becomes less about simply spending enough time in bed and more about giving your body the opportunity to work according to the rhythm it has followed for an entire lifetime. The clock on your wall measures time. The clock inside your body measures health. And after 70, those two clocks need to work together more closely than ever before. Now that we understand why timing becomes increasingly important with age, a natural question follows: what time should someone over 70 actually go to bed? Many people expect a single, perfect answer. Perhaps 900 p.m. exactly, or maybe 1000 p.m. It would certainly make life simpler if there were one magical number that worked for everyone. But biology is rarely that simple. Doctors and sleep researchers generally agree on something more practical. Rather than pointing to one exact minute on the clock, they often recommend a bedtime window, and for many healthy adults over 70, that window falls roughly between 900 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. At first, that range might seem surprisingly early. Some people even think, "I'm not a child. Why would I go to bed before the late night news is over?" The answer has less to do with age itself and more to do with how the body's internal clock changes over time. Imagine your body as an orchestra. Every evening, dozens of invisible musicians begin preparing for the night's performance. Hormones shift. Body temperature slowly drops. Blood pressure changes. Digestion begins to quiet down. Brain activity gradually moves away from the alertness needed for the day and toward the restoration needed for the night. Like any orchestra, These musicians perform best when everyone starts together. If bedtime arrives during this natural preparation, falling asleep often feels effortless. Sleep becomes deeper, interruptions become fewer, and waking in the morning feels more natural. But what happens if you ignore those signals? Suppose your body begins preparing for sleep around 9:30 p.m., yet you decide to stay awake until midnight watching television or scrolling through your phone. Eventually, your brain adapts by producing a second wave of alertness. Suddenly, you don't feel sleepy anymore. Many people interpret this as proof they weren't tired in the first place. In reality, they may have simply missed the first train. Think of a train station. The train arrives exactly when scheduled. If you're standing on the platform, you board easily. But if you arrive 20 minutes late, the train doesn't wait. You must wait for another opportunity, often with a much longer delay. Sleep works in a remarkably similar way. Your brain offers a natural sleep opportunity each evening. Catching it often leads to smoother, deeper rest. Missing it can mean lying awake, tossing and turning even though you're technically more tired. This explains why some older adults say, "I wasn't sleepy at 10, but now it's 1 in the morning and I still can't sleep." The problem wasn't necessarily a lack of tiredness. It was a mismatch between the body's rhythm and the chosen bedtime. Of course, not everyone shares the same schedule. Someone who naturally wakes at 5:30 in the morning will likely benefit from an earlier bedtime than someone who consistently wakes at 7:30. The goal is not to force everyone into one rigid routine. The goal is to match bedtime with the body's natural rhythm while still allowing enough time for quality sleep. Consistency matters just as much. Imagine moving breakfast from 700 a.m. one day to noon the next, then back to 800 a.m., then skipping it entirely. Your digestive system would struggle to establish a predictable rhythm. Your sleep system behaves much the same way. Going to bed at roughly the same time each night strengthens the body's internal clock. Over weeks and months, this regularity can make falling asleep easier, improve sleep quality, and help you wake up feeling more refreshed. The ideal bedtime after 70, then, is not about following an arbitrary rule. It is about working with your biology instead of against it. When your bedtime aligns with your body's natural signals, sleep becomes less of a nightly battle and more of a reliable process, one that supports better energy, sharper thinking, and healthier aging. Let's explore an idea that seems almost too simple to matter. Imagine two people, both over the age of 70. They each sleep for 7.5 hours every night. One goes to bed around 9:30 p.m. and wakes naturally at 500 a.m. The other stays awake until after midnight and sleeps until 7:30 a.m. whenever possible. On paper, they appear to be getting the same amount of sleep. So should their bodies perform the same way? Not necessarily. Think of charging your phone. Suppose you plug it in during a stable electrical supply and it reaches a full charge by morning. Now imagine trying to charge it during a power outage with electricity that keeps cutting in and out. The phone may spend the same amount of time connected to the charger, but the quality of the charge is very different. Sleep follows a similar principle. The body doesn't simply need hours in bed. It needs those hours to occur when its internal repair systems are expecting to work. When bedtime drifts later and later, those natural processes can become less efficient, even if total sleep time appears reasonable. One of the first things people often notice is lighter, more fragmented sleep. Instead of moving smoothly through the different stages of sleep, they wake more often during the night. Sometimes these awakenings are so brief they are forgotten by morning. Yet each interruption slightly disrupts the body's ability to restore itself. Now imagine reading a book while someone interrupts you every 15 minutes. You eventually finish the chapter, but your concentration is broken again and again. Your brain must repeatedly start over. Nighttime sleep can become surprisingly similar. Another consequence is daytime fatigue. This isn't always the dramatic exhaustion people expect. Often it appears as a subtle lack of energy. Everyday tasks feel slightly more difficult. Walking seems to require more effort. Conversations demand more concentration. The body isn't necessarily asleep. It simply isn't fully refreshed. Then there is the effect on thinking and memory. The brain spends part of the night organizing information collected during the day. It's a bit like a librarian returning books to the correct shelves after the library closes. If that work is interrupted or shortened, finding the right book the next day may take longer. Many older adults notice this as forgetting names, misplacing everyday items, or needing extra time to recall familiar information. Occasional forgetfulness is a normal part of aging, but consistently poor sleep can make these moments more noticeable. Balance is another area affected by inadequate or poorly timed sleep. Picture someone trying to walk across a room while wearing glasses with slightly blurry lenses. They can still reach the other side, but every step demands more attention. Similarly, when the brain hasn't had restorative sleep, reaction times may slow, coordination can become less precise, and maintaining balance may require greater effort. For older adults, even small changes in stability can increase the likelihood of trips and falls. Late bedtimes can also influence mood. Have you noticed how the world seems more manageable after a good night's sleep? Problems that felt overwhelming yesterday often appear smaller in the morning. That isn't just a change in attitude. A well-rested brain is better able to regulate emotions, solve problems, and respond calmly to stress. When sleep quality declines, patience often declines with it. Small frustrations may feel larger, and emotional resilience can weaken. Perhaps the most important point is that these effects usually do not appear overnight. Missing one bedtime rarely changes your life. The body is remarkably resilient, but repeatedly staying up later than your natural rhythm prefers is more like placing a tiny pebble in your shoe. One step isn't a problem. 1,000 steps gradually become painful. The same is true for sleep. Each late night may seem insignificant on its own, yet over months and years, those small disruptions can quietly accumulate, influencing energy, memory, balance, mood, and overall well-being. In the end, staying up too late is not merely about losing an hour or two of sleep. It's about asking your body to perform its most important nightly maintenance at the wrong time. And after the age of 70, that timing becomes one of the simplest and most powerful choices you can make to support healthy aging. By now, you might be thinking, if bedtime is so important, what can I actually do to make falling asleep easier? That's an excellent question because good sleep is rarely created by one dramatic change. More often, it is built through a series of small, consistent habits that gently guide the body toward rest. Think about landing an airplane. A pilot doesn't wait until the last second to prepare for landing. Long before the wheels touch the runway, the aircraft begins slowing down. The altitude gradually decreases. The engines adjust. The landing gear lowers. Every step happens in sequence, making the landing smooth and controlled. Your brain prepares for sleep in much the same way. If you spend the final hour of your evening under bright lights, watching exciting television, checking stressful emails, or scrolling endlessly through social media, it's like asking the airplane to keep climbing instead of descending. The brain receives mixed signals. One of the most powerful habits begins the following morning, not at night. Sunlight. That may sound surprising. After all, we're talking about bedtime, not breakfast. But morning light acts like a daily reset button for your internal clock. Imagine someone resetting a wristwatch every morning to the correct time. Over weeks and months, the watch stays accurate because it is constantly being synchronized. Your biological clock needs the same kind of daily adjustment. When natural sunlight reaches your eyes shortly after waking, it tells the brain, this is daytime. Hours later, that same clock begins preparing for sleep at the appropriate time. Without enough morning light, the body's timing can gradually drift, making it harder to feel sleepy when bedtime arrives. The next habit is regular physical activity. Notice the word regular, not intense. Many people imagine they need strenuous workouts to sleep well. In reality, even moderate movement, such as walking, gardening, gentle stretching, or light exercise, helps the body build a healthy need for nighttime rest. Think of a child who spends the afternoon running through a park. By evening, sleep often comes naturally because the body has used its energy. Adults never lose that principle. The activities change, but the biology remains remarkably similar. Another helpful habit involves caffeine. Coffee, tea, some soft drinks, and even chocolate contain compounds that encourage alertness. For many younger adults, a late afternoon cup of coffee may not seem like a problem. But after 70, the body often processes caffeine more slowly. Imagine pouring water into a bucket with a very small drain. The water leaves, but much more gradually than expected. Hours later, some of it is still there. Caffeine behaves in a similar way. A cup enjoyed late in the day may still be influencing the brain long after dinner, making it more difficult to fall asleep even if you don't feel especially awake. Evening light deserves attention as well. For thousands of years, humans experienced bright days followed by dark nights. Today, televisions, tablets, smartphones, and bright household lighting can make the brain believe the day is continuing. It's a little like convincing someone the sun hasn't set, even though it has. Reducing bright light during the final hour before bed gives the brain permission to begin its natural nighttime routine. This doesn't mean sitting in complete darkness. It simply means creating a calmer environment. Softer lighting, quieter activities, reading a book, listening to gentle music, or enjoying peaceful conversation can all become signals that the day is ending. Finally, perhaps the simplest habit of all is consistency. Suppose you moved every meal to a different time each day. Breakfast one day at 6, the next at 10, then at noon. Your digestive system would constantly be trying to guess what comes next. Sleep is no different. Going to bed and waking up at roughly the same time each day strengthens your body's internal rhythm. Over time, the brain begins anticipating sleep instead of resisting it. The remarkable thing is that none of these habits are complicated. They don't require expensive equipment, miracle supplements, or secret techniques. Instead, they work because they respect the way the human body has always functioned. Sleep isn't something we force to happen. It's something we invite, and after the age of 70, those simple daily habits become the invitation that tells the body, the work of the day is finished. Now it's time to rest, recover, and prepare for tomorrow. After hearing all of this, it's easy to ask one final question. If doctors recommend going to bed between 9:00 p.m. and 10:30 p.m., should everyone over 70 simply pick a time within that window and follow it forever? It sounds logical. We often like simple rules because they remove uncertainty. If there were one perfect bedtime that guaranteed excellent sleep for everyone, life would certainly be easier. But the human body isn't built like a machine rolling off an assembly line. Think about shoe sizes. Imagine walking into a store where every customer, regardless of height or age, was handed exactly the same pair of shoes. Some people would find them comfortable. Others would struggle with shoes that were too tight or too loose. The shoes wouldn't be bad. They simply wouldn't fit every individual. Bedtime works in a surprisingly similar way. While many adults over 70 naturally do well within the recommended bedtime range, your ideal bedtime still depends on your own biological rhythm, your health, your daily routine, and the time you naturally wake up. Consider two friends. The first wakes up every morning at 5:30 without an alarm. By 9:15 in the evening, they begin yawning, their eyes grow heavy, and they feel genuinely sleepy. The second naturally wakes closer to 700 in the morning and doesn't feel sleepy until about 10:15 at night. Who has the correct bedtime? Perhaps both do. The important question isn't whether they fall asleep at the exact same hour. The important question is whether each person is working with their own internal clock instead of constantly fighting against it. Imagine swimming across a river. If you swim with the current, every stroke moves you forward with less effort. But if you insist on swimming against the current, every movement becomes harder, even though you're using the same muscles. Your body's natural sleep rhythm is that current. When bedtime matches the signals your brain is already sending, sleep often arrives smoothly. When you ignore those signals night after night, falling asleep can feel like swimming upstream. So how do you recognize your own ideal bedtime? The answer isn't found by watching the clock alone. Instead, pay attention to your body. Do your eyelids become heavy at roughly the same time each evening? Do you begin losing interest in television or reading? Do you find yourself yawning repeatedly? These are not signs of weakness or aging. They are messages. Your brain is quietly saying, the repair work is ready to begin. Many people make the mistake of pushing past these early signals. They think, I'll just watch one more episode, or I'll finish one more chapter. Sometimes that extra hour doesn't seem to matter. But here's something fascinating. Sleepiness often arrives in waves. If you ignore the first wave, your brain may temporarily become more alert again. Suddenly, you no longer feel sleepy, even though your body was ready for bed an hour earlier. It's like missing a bus. The next one eventually arrives, but you've spent unnecessary time waiting at the station. Consistency also plays a powerful role. Imagine trying to meet a friend for dinner, but choosing a completely different restaurant and a different time every single day. Your friend would never know where to find you. Your biological clock experiences similar confusion when bedtime constantly changes. Going to bed at 9:30 one night, midnight the next, and 10:45 the following evening forces the brain to keep guessing. A regular schedule removes that uncertainty. Over time, your body begins preparing for sleep before you even climb into bed. Hormones shift on cue, body temperature falls at the expected time, and the transition into sleep becomes smoother. Perhaps the most reassuring lesson is this: finding your perfect bedtime is not about chasing perfection. It's about discovering a routine that leaves you waking with steady energy, a clear mind, and a sense that your body has truly recovered. Some nights will always be different. Life happens. Travel, celebrations, family visits, or unexpected events can interrupt even the best routines. What matters is not occasional exceptions, but the pattern you create over months and years. In the end, the perfect bedtime after 70 isn't hidden on a clock hanging on the wall. It's written in the quiet signals your body gives you every evening. Learn to notice those signals, respect them, and work alongside them rather than against them. When you do, bedtime stops feeling like a rule to obey and becomes a daily partnership with your own biology. One that supports better sleep, sharper thinking, greater energy, and a healthier, more enjoyable life.